MCP servers are basically a way to have AI or give AI a way to actually execute actions. So today you have your chatbot, you can go back and forth with the AI, but it actually can't do anything. It can't execute any APIs. It can't add tasks to your task board or send a Slack message. That's where MCP servers come in. MCP servers provide a unified way for these providers like Slack, Gmail, whatever, to give AIs a way to do those actions, like send a Slack message or read emails, et cetera, update the CRM field. So that's the power of MCPs, is it actually gives these LLMs, AIs, agents, ways to actually execute actions on your behalf or as a bot user or whatever. And so with ReadMe, since we are an API documentation platform, we are able to leverage your APIs and wrap it inside of an MCP server. And we do this in kind of a different way. Typically, if you just gave your entire API spec to AI, that would blow up your context windows because AI has certain limits on how much data you can send it in one question. So what we decided to do, our approach, is actually expose search functionality across your endpoints so that the AI can smartly figure out what you're doing. It can send us a query to be like, look for endpoints that do these things. And we send those endpoints back, relevant endpoints back, and then it can hopefully figure out which one to call, which has been doing pretty well. And then it can execute those APIs as well, not just for, it has the ability to also execute those APIs, not just search through them. So those are like two different use cases. If you're writing code in your IDE, like in a cursor or a code editor, typically you just want the read functionality. So it can just read your API documentation, write client wrappers around your APIs, or figure out parameters and stuff like that. However, if you're making agents, that's where the execute part comes in, where it can actually execute your own APIs and do agentic tasks on top of your APIs. So here I'm just going to go through a demo. Let's just go ahead and it'll make probably a little more sense. Awesome. Okay. So I made an example application. This is just a task tracker. You have users, you have your team, you have all the tasks that they're working on, and they have due dates and all that kind of stuff. It's something I vibe coded pretty quickly. And this is our ReadMe documentation for our task website. So you can see your typical endpoints, getting a user. You can see it returns my list of users. Now, this is pretty busy. I want to move it and use my chatbot to interact with this website. So I just go into the AI pane. So this is me as a website or as the admin of this website. I simply go to MCP, toggle this switch on, and now I fully have an MCP server ready to go. So we can move over to our Claude. Any MCP server client will do, but I'm just going to use Claude for this demo. MCP, and just show you that here's a task flow API. This is that URL. It's all set up, ready to go. So let's just give it something really easy. Just give me a status report across all the projects. And then for any project less than 50% complete, list the block task and show me a comment while that's there. So as it's going, the first thing you can see is it's going to list the endpoints to figure out kind of which one to use. And the second thing it's starting to do is actually execute these endpoints. So getting the projects, getting the tasks, all of these APIs are available. Now, one thing I want to mention, like for example, this health check, we have the ability to cancel this. So there's not really an advantage to exposing this health check to the AI. So we can simply just disable it. And now the MCPs or AIs won't have access to this route, and they won't even see it in this list. So we don't have to worry about them calling this health endpoint or getting confused about it. And that's pretty simple. You can enable, disable as many as you want, however you see fit. So we come back and yes, made a nice report saying a bunch of these tasks are blocked. And we see that there's a few that are needed to do something. So let's add a little bit more users because it seems like there's a lot of blocked tasks. So we can do add Anand as a backend dev. So this is now going to go figure out that it needs to call the users endpoint, the post users, and then it's going to execute that. And once that's done, I should show up. If I go back to my CRM task manager, I'll be right here as somebody ready to pick up tasks. Now, let's clear this and do another one. Find all the overdue tasks, and for each one, check the workload. And if they have more than 4 tasks, reassign the overdue task to the team member with the fewest tasks. And that would be me, that I just got added to the task list. So you can see we're not giving it really, we didn't have to explain how this API works. We didn't really have to explain much. We just explained what we want to do. And the power of these LLMs is they can figure out which endpoints to hit due to what's exposed. And so this is going to go through that and in a few seconds show what it's doing. We can also open up another tab and do things in parallel. So the next thing I want to show you guys is custom tools. So let's do something like generate this week's status report for leadership. And that's pretty vague, but the first thing is going to call this tool called get status report template. Now, what is that? As you see user AI or APIs, you can create these things called custom tools. Now here we have a few custom tools. So for example, the status report, what this does is you can see it. And this basically just returns a format for generating status reports. So if you see a common thing is things have to be formatted in a certain way, you can give it instructions on how to do that. So now anytime any user asks for a status report, it is going to use this format, and then the executive summary. And then for each project, we format it nicely and whatnot. Once that's done, it'll show us in this format, basically. Custom tools is a way to provide extra information that's not in your docs or your guides pages to the MCP server. So you can think of this as like complete workflows. So for example, if I make a prompt saying triage all of my tasks, it will come pick up this triage runbook, and it'll tell you step 1, find all the problems, which is fetch all the overdue tasks, fetch all the block tasks, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a great way if you have any like specific workflows you see your users doing. This is a way to wrap that up and expose it to the MCP server so it can do specific tasks in certain orders. If there's also any random information that you want, like for example, a team notebook or a team handbook, which gives you a list of all the users and what they're good at. This is just a random example, but you can think of this as just providing kind of ad hoc information that you think would be valuable for all your end users. And templates is also a good one, where you'll give it a template and it can actually make those API calls to fill the template. So you can see here, it did the team workload, it had the executive summary, it formatted all of the projects and how we wanted to. So those are the real powerful ways to add custom tooling. And again, this was the previous prompt where we wanted the status report. It showed the status report. It used the template that we wanted to give it. And yeah, so that's the overall demo of all of these features. You can think of any ways to prompt these APIs to do anything, and it'll just execute it based on whatever your APIs are. So now that we have that done, so this was using the MCP server for my own project. So I had my task flow app. These are my APIs, but also I have my documentation on ReadMe. So I can also leverage ReadMe's API server, which allows me to interact with my docs here. So
Sorry to interrupt you, Anand. Before we jump over to ReadMe's MCP server, going back to custom tools, it looks like we got a couple questions in chat about any advice for end users to access endpoints which require auth. Is there a standard approach? And it looks like a couple people have questions around OAuth.
Yeah. For authentication, right now we only support header-based authentication. So as you set up your MCP server, you can pass in an authorization header, and that API key basically gets proxied over to your endpoint. So if you have an API key or a bearer token, you'll just paste that into your configuration. Let me see if I can show you that. MCP. This is just going to show you the tools. Yeah, so you can just pass in these header tokens or API key. If your API accepts API key or whatever headers you want, all these headers get proxied directly to your endpoint at the end of the day. So for my MCP server, my demo one, I pass this XAPI key and AI key, which gives it access to my APIs. If you have a private project, oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Anand. So with this approach, there is a risk of expiry with the token, right? Like on line 788. So we might have to keep updating it, I'm guessing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so you would have to, if your token expires, you would have to update this if you don't have a long-lived token.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then I think the other questions were around if you have a private README project or one that's password protected, you would just add a X README auth, and then you would put your README sites password to access whatever you need to access your documentation or your README token.
Got it. One other non-auth related question. If you can go
Yep.
back to your admin page, please.
Yes.
So this AI, is it only visible for admins in the sense that can I expose this to my company's customers as well?
Yeah, so the demo that I showed you was a user of your end user of your product, not an admin. So imagine,
I see, because is there like a setting I have to enable for that to be visible? Because right now in my company's README, it's not visible to the end users, only to me.
It would be this, if you go into this AI panel, you hit MCP and you just enable it, then it's enabled for all of your anybody that, as long as your website's not private, it's enabled for all your end users. We have this quick button right here which will generate a template page for you if you need that. So that would be,
yeah, that's what I did right now. There's a template page.
Yeah,
that's how I'm exposing, but what you have is much cooler on the right hand side with all the tools enabling, disabling and stuff. Yeah, to get that shown is the problem. Yeah,
got it. So this side is, yeah, this is only for admins.
I see. Okay,
this controls your MCP server.
Understood.
Yeah, this
Understood.
Your
Okay,
MCP server. Yeah.
Fair enough.
We do have on our roadmap, we do have ways for users in this URL with query parameters to filter themselves if they would like. You can add those to the instructions as well, but that's currently on the roadmap.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Anand.
Yeah, no worries. Cool. Was there any other questions, Justine? I don't have the chat open.
You're good for now. There's a question about just seeing the MCP tab. I'm debugging that for Tony, but I think we can move on unless does anyone else have any other questions before Anand moves on to using ReadMe's MCP server to edit your docs?
This is just a quick one anyway.
Cool.
But I think I might have. Okay, cool. So I was just going to do something pretty quickly to make sure that it's still available. Nope. I might have just messed up the file editing it. 1 second. Live demos.
We believe in you.
That should be good. I know. Okay, let's go back. Hopefully that fixed it. Okay, let's make sure it's connected.
I feel like live demos hit a little bit different with AI now.
Yeah. All right. So now that the MCP, I fixed my config and we're good. So this is also, as an admin now, this is connected to my ReadMe project, and that's through the API key for my admin API key. So I can do stuff like update my welcome page to call out demo was successful. And this is now going to be using ReadMe's use ReadMe API. All right. So now this is going to be using ReadMe's MCP server, which allows you to interact with RDocs instead of my product, which was the task manager. So it's going to do all this, and hopefully it will come out and update our welcome page with the demo successful once it's done thinking. But yeah, that's how you would use, just one example of how you'd use MCP server, our MCP server, to update our docs once this runs through. But yeah, we can open it up for questions as this works through the background. And there we go, demo successful.
Nice call out.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, that's all I had. That's pretty much all I had to share, but happy to answer any questions y'all might have about this feature or any other things I might have missed about MCP servers.
Yes, Tracy, please go ahead. Oh, sorry, Tony.
No, Tracy raised her their hand. I didn't, so I'll.
All good.
So
right.
This is perhaps a little bit outside the scope of the MCP server context, but so right now we use the README in order to serve up our documents about our APIs, and we're wanting to establish a conversational AI to be able to help people work their way through the documentation set. I'm guessing that turning on or enabling the Ask AI is like the first step to that process, but I'm not sure what all is provided for through that, and that is why I'm here, just to try to understand a little bit more about what capabilities you guys have through that and what would be our steps required to be able to create conversational AI to interact with our documentation set.
Yes, so that would just be our Ask AI feature. This same place in this AI panel, you have the Ask AI. And once you enable this, we have a chatbot here that has access to your documentation, and the user can ask about it. How do I add a new user, for example? And this is against this documentation, which was my sample project management app. So it'll tell you how to use it, give you an example, whatever. You can change like the tone, how answer it is, any forbidden words. There's a bunch of customizations you can do depending on your plan. But yeah, you can select the model that you want it to be. But that's pretty much how you get started. It's pretty out of the box experience once you enable the AI booster or whichever plan has the AIs on there added on it. It's just in this tab is how you would configure it, and it's shown on every page.
And if we wanted to index some additional documents that weren't housed on that site or provide tools, would those be done through the MCP framework or?
So if you do have external knowledge bases, we do have this custom knowledge. Yeah, knowledge you can paste in here. This would only apply to this Ask AI box, but that's currently our only way to add new features for this Ask AI product inside of it.
And how would that knowledge base, is that just additional data that I would put in there limited to 10,000 characters? Is that?
Yes, that would just be, we would take this, we would index it, and it would be indexed whenever the AI needs information. It's available there in its index, in its vector.
So we can't call out to run a tool or something on an external server or to acquire knowledge from an external server to feed that AI assistant.
Yeah, correct. That's something we're looking into, but we don't have that today.
Thanks.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Tony, take it away.
Hi there. Thanks for this demo here. I missed the first part of this, so embarrassingly, I'd like to understand a little bit more about the MCP functionality that you were showing in the beginning versus ReadMe's MCP. Is this like I can basically add an MCP layer on top of my APIs? Like
Exactly. Yeah. What I was showing you is imagine this is my product, not apart from ReadMe. Like I made a project management system, and this is my website. These are my APIs. I enable this MCP server for my product, and now it's live. And then I can do all those things that I was showing. Any agentic task that you would want to do. Not only can it query this information, like it can get the list of users added in the demo. It added me. It can also execute those APIs as well.
But I do that via ReadMe?
You would do that via this MCP server URL. So you would configure your MCP client with this URL, and that will give it access, and also along with any authentication headers that you need for your APIs. And that will enable your agent or MCP client to access your own APIs, not ReadMe's APIs, your own APIs.
Could you go into your client to quickly show that, Anand?
Yeah.
I think you had it.
So,
yeah.
For example,
the thing that maybe this is me not being familiar with this part of ReadMe. We use ReadMe as really a documentation source and a place to put our Swagger API. So I think maybe, is this like you can host your websites on ReadMe? Because I see this, like, how does ReadMe have access to my APIs? It's my question.
So we have your APIs here documented. So our MCP server is generated around your public facing APIs. Yeah. So since we have all the information already of how to interact your endpoints, because we have your API spec, we just created an MCP server that has access to those APIs. So we're just basically a proxy layer. So as the MCP server, or as requests are made to our MCP servers, if it's an API request, we'll just proxy that directly to your end APIs.
I see. Okay, I understand now. And then the auth that you use to talk to that API is what?
The authentication would be the exact same as your API would use for header-based authentication. So today we only support header-based authentication. So you would need to provide however your API is authenticated, either a bearer token or whatever.
Cool. And do you like auto-generate some of the instructions and the tools based on the API spec?
Yes. So the tools that we provide allow the AIs to search across your spec to determine which API to hit. So if you have like thousands, we wouldn't typically give you 1,000. It would call the search tool or search route endpoint, and we would hopefully surface the right one that it needs.
I see now. Okay, so that's the layer of convenience that ReadMe offers here, which is you can have thousands of routes, but ReadMe will guide the agent to the one that's most useful.
Exactly.
Okay.
And just a note if for some reason you never wanted these agents to actually execute, you can simply turn that off. You can just turn off the execute request, and that means the agent now can only list your endpoints and introspect about your open API file, but it doesn't have the ability to actually request that.
And I'm assuming this only works with publicly facing APIs, right? Because ReadMe cannot be self-hosted.
So if you do have private documentation, you would have to pass in another header, a specific ReadMe header to that to get access. So it is possible to expose private sites with this as well.
What I mean is if the API is not public.
Oh, correct. Yeah. If your API is behind some VPC or something, then yeah, we don't have that functionality right now.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Ooh, this is a fun question because it's coming down the pipe, which is a question from Kelly about MCP server visibility. She says that right now we don't have a way to see how customers are using our MCP server. Do MCP search queries appear in Ask AI Analytics? Any plans to add MCP specific usage tracking?
So today, I'll just show you ours. You can view, if you have my developers, you can view that MCP metrics there, but we are currently on our roadmap working on exposing just MCP metrics and AI analytics on a separate page. But for this, for example, anything that's prepended with MCP or ReadMe's MCP server, you can go in and see like the search, the execute, which tools they called. But we are working on moving that into a different area of the product. But this, if you have my developers right now, you can, this is enabled by default if you have the MCP server on it.
Cool. Thanks, Anand. Another question is, for the knowledge base, we need to separately feed all information to ReadMe's MCP server. Can we have capability to access only our group for those information?
Could you say that again?
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Kelly. I'm trying to read the question myself. Ruby, if you want to unmute or clarify your question a little bit there, I think is it that if you have an external knowledge base, you need to feed all your information to ReadMe's MCP server?
Yeah, sure. So just actually have to know about the information because we are having some documents on the ReadMe portal, right? So just we would like to know for the continuation of a Tracy's question, basically, because Anand explained about a knowledge-based things, right? So if I am trying to understand and trying to get the information for only our user for that document, so is ReadMe having capability for those, like only our group can access for those information? How we can do that? Do we need to feed all information separately on a ReadMe MCP server for those type of a scenario, or how we can do that?
Yeah, so for external knowledge bases, the only way to do that is we have a 1,000-character like text box. You can basically put in extra additional information. If you're using MCP servers and if that other documentation is public, you can actually make a new tool, whatever information that is. I don't know, extra data. You can make a tool called extra data, and then it can be like information about our users, and then you can paste the actual URLs here.
Okay.
And save it, and then that way you would need to make it clear what kind of data this is. That way the AI would know that we would expose this tool. So if this is like information about you, let's just say user data.
So this would be not available for publicly, right? So only for a specific user, this information will be available. That means.
Oh, so no, this would be available for everybody. So I see what you're saying. So you want to be able to expose different information for public users of MCP server versus internal private users of the MCP server. Yeah, we do not have that functionality today. We do not have that a way to differentiate users and what we show them. It's all or nothing at this point.
Yep. Yeah, that's what. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the explanation.
No worries.
Thanks, Ruby.
Yeah. Yep. I guess one caveat to that, we can't show you different information, but it's up to the user to supply their API key. So your API should be able to distinguish based on the API key they provide, ideally.
Got it. Yeah. But do we have any set of a document with respect to that, so I can go through and I can look for that implementation?
It should be under our MCP docs here on the README documentation page.
Okay, sure. I will check then. Yeah. Thank you.
And I'll send out a follow-up email after this as well with all of these resources.
And with this meeting, we are getting this recording as well, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'll slice it up so that's like the meat and potatoes of the recording.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Jesse.
Yeah, thanks for the walkthrough. I'm excitedly going through ReadMe's documentation about ReadMe's documentation while you're demoing here, because the llm.txt file caught my eye as a way to, the way I'm thinking about it is onboarding whatever agent you're using under the hood to 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 power the interactions with users who are sending requests to the MCP server. I don't know if what I just said made sense outside of my head, but I tried. Does the llms.txt file, is that our opportunity to onboard the internals of the way the AI is going to make sense of how we've chosen to organize the information in our documentation? Does that make sense? Like when I hire someone for the team, I'm like, hey, welcome to the team. Here's our docs. Check it out. Ask me questions when you get confused. That's how we make the docs better. Right?
Right.
And I don't actually get to say that with my face and give tips with my face to an agent. Is this llms.txt where we would do that, where we would say, hey, if there's a discrepancy, but hopefully there isn't, but there always is. If there's a discrepancy between here and here, like always defer to here, or these types of tips. What are the best practices, I guess, is what I'm stumbling into asking here around llms.txt. And is the way I'm thinking about that, is that making sense to you? Or could you help me out? Could you correct my mental models in some way?
Yeah. LM.txt is actually a separate feature with regards to our AI or our MCP servers or the Ask AI. This basically just makes your site indexable by AI and gives you it's basically a sitemap. It tells you all the places that your documentation is. This is READMEs, for example. Now, for the MCP and Ask AI, those don't use the LMs.txt, because what we've done under the hood is we've actually taken your docs, we've run them through, we vectorize them so we can semantically search and kind of surface the right information. So the only way to get what you're describing is, if there's a conflict, is you'd either need to add, for example, a custom tools, like in case of a conflict resolution tool or something. If you're using the MCP part, if you're using Ask AI, you could add it as a snippet, like inside of the custom knowledge. You can say, always prioritize agent docs over enterprise docs, stuff like that. Alternately, you can keep it in here, keep it as in, if you can keep it in your docs, be like, if this is conflicting with something. But those are your three avenues to figure out that. But at the end of the day, the AI is probably going to make up its own like interpretation, to be honest. If you have the custom tools or the knowledge, it will use those. But typically, if there's a conflict, it kind of figures that out by itself, or like guesses or hallucinates something. If you don't provide that as either a specific custom tool for conflict resolution or a custom knowledge in our Ask AI thing.
Totally. Let me try saying back to you what I'm hearing. So llms.txt is an alternative to enable an agent to consume our documentation. It's an alternative to the MCPs.
Correct.
And it's also an alternative to the Ask AI.
Correct.
And Ask AI is a way to leverage the same type of interactions that an agent would through MCP, except Ask AI is a pathway to leverage that agentic access to the documentations through the user interface in the browser for someone visiting our documentation page. But it's powered in the same way. It's actually configured, whatever we configure it to do will affect both Ask AI and the MCP server.
Exactly. Yes.
Cool.
You can think of Ask AI is in the browser. You can chat in the browser is basically what Ask AI is. MCP brings that functionality to the user so they can use their own Claude, ChatGPT, whatever, instead of going to the browser, they're using their desktop tool. And LLMs.txt is completely separate if they want to kind of use tools to parse our docs or get a whole sitemap of your documentation.
Okay. So now that we've unearthed my misconception about what I thought LLMs.txt is doing, is there a way to do that? Is there a way? So use Claude as an example. You can add a claude.md file to a repository to say, hey, welcome to the repository. Here's the guided tour. Is there a way to do that here while leveraging ReadMe's MCP server for our docs?
So that would be like a getting started would be a custom tool. So that was one use case I didn't demo. So you can add a tool like set up your workspace or introduction or like getting started or read this first. That would be a custom tool you would implement. We've seen users, for example, if they depend on Node.js, certain Node.js packages, they would add that as like install dependencies or environment. If their applications work only on Mac, for example, they would just be like, only on Mac, do this special thing. Or if you're on Windows, do this other special thing. Or if you're just getting started with the documentation, you can also add like getting started, like always look at these 3 pages to get started, and then look at these other pages for whatever extra information you need.
Understood. I think that might be useful to a question that was asked earlier as well. Like with that, it sounds like custom tools is an exciting place to fine tune the behavior of the agent. And right now, that's the only place to do that. That's where the fine tuning happens. And extending is maybe, or I guess custom tools I'm thinking is mostly extending the functionality that you get for free out of the box as a README consumer. The fine tuning isn't available yet. Do you know if there's any plans in the future to fine tune the behavior of the agent, or am I getting too greedy right now?
So custom tools are the way to fine tune that, the MCP agent. For Ask AI, we do have a customized thing today, but I think it's only for, I don't know which plan you have to have for this part, but I think it's enterprise only.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a way to customize this part. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks so much. This was really helpful. We just had a session last week and just merged a pull request today, adding the config file to start releasing this internally before sharing it with all of our customers. So seeing the walkthrough that you shared was validating to what we've done so far and exciting to point out what we could do next. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks, Jesse. Okay, we've got a couple of more questions, and then I think there's another question about giving an overview of just that AI panel. So I'm happy to take that one, Anand. But before we move there, Alan has a question. With the lm.txt file, is best practice to add a short blurb in the description portion of the guide or reference? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so how this is generated is this is the title of your documentation, and this is your description. That's how this is generated, basically. It just takes your title, and then it takes your description. I don't know if that's big enough. And then your description. So yeah, you would ideally want a description in every one of your pages if you want that kind of discoverable in that sense.
Cool. And then another follow-up question from Tracy is, what do you do with this file now that you've generated it? It has the right descriptions. What do you do with it? Yeah,
so typically this use case is more for scrapers. So if ChatGPT, Gemini, they're scraping your website, this is typically for them. You can think of this as a sitemap. So when there's external scrapers, they can scrape your docs, and this is good for agent optimization or search engine. Instead of search engine optimization, it's the new agent optimization to make you more visible to AI that's scraping your site. But if you do, this can also be used if you have your own custom tooling, where if you need your entire sitemap that's in a markdown file for agents to read, this is also a way to do that. But typically it's more towards Ask AI or the MCP server. They provide a better way to access your docs, especially if you have like thousands and thousands of pages. This is more for scraping purposes or kind of automation.
Awesome. Thank you. I know we're getting a lot of questions here. I'm going to quickly share my screen to give a rundown of the AI panel. And also the other thing we could do is I'll schedule more office hours because each one of these tabs you could spend so much time on. And I've run office hours on each one of these. I'm going to quickly just share my screen here. So I'm on desktop 1. Okay. These are our docs. I'm on a forked version of it that I like to demo with because I don't want to mess with our public docs. So I'm currently in view mode. As you all saw, Anand popped open this AI panel on the side. This is in admin mode, right? And here I'll go to edit mode because I actually want to make some changes. At a very high level, the agent you can think of as your docs writing assistant. You can either choose from one of these 3 preset options that we have here that's like fixed grammar, add some examples, which means add MDX components like cards, components, tabs, add a summary. Or you could write your own free text here. You can choose from various models. But as a quick example, I'll just add examples here. You can add code examples. You can ultimately decide whether or not you want to apply these changes to the page. It's going to stream some of its thoughts. It's going to show you diffs of the edits it's looking to make, how many lines it's looking to add or remove. It's going to give you some reasoning as why it wants to make those changes. So here, this page this was a bad example, but because it's our welcome to ReadMe guide, but let's say if I did it on our API reference section, to delete an API key, maybe that would have been a little better here. But as an example, I'll just say, if we go back to guides, I'll say add a card component with FAQs. And so basically the agent can do just about anything that you ask for in terms of editing your docs. So including implementing those components, researching the web. There's also additional knowledge sources that you can add. We like to add our blog, so everything's in sync here. If there's additional documentation elsewhere that you have, you can also add it here. The linter, this is a very fast overview, but the linter you can think about. The linter is a traditional software development tool where typically you're going to catch errors and warnings before you deploy code, you push out code. We brought the linter inside of the docs writing experience. And so what the linter can do is you're going to define some rules. And so here I've just defined some pretty basic rules, and everyone has different rules that they'd like to apply to their company's docs, right? So a style guide is the definition of what makes your docs good. Errors are absolute critical issues that you want to catch. And then warnings are maybe just subjective. Hey, let's take a second look at this. So these are like, you just write them in plain language. And then I have them here. And what you can do is actually run the linter against every page. So the linter works on a per page basis. So you can run the linter, and it gave me a 9.3 out of 10, no errors, thankfully, and a couple warnings here. It looks like I'm using MCP server as maybe that's jargon. Maybe I want to go back and explain that a little bit more. And I have a little bit of uncertain language. What's really powerful about the linter is it takes all of those errors and warnings, puts it right into my agent, and the agent can actually help you fix those warnings, errors, anything that's going on in the style guide there, and you can apply those. So here it's showing you the differences between what it'd like to apply, what it'd like to change, and ultimately you are the decider of whether or not you want to apply those edits. So I took a look at them and I do like them. And so that's how the linter works. And then I think the last thing, so Anand went over MCP and lm.txt here. Ask AI is a way for your customers to chat with your docs and APIs. So here in the panel, in the admin experience is where you're really configuring the Ask AI experience, what that looks like. So you can choose a couple of things here for it to pop out, and it's a conversational experience. You could also add a dropdown so that your docs open up as a markdown file in various LLMs, including ChatGPT, Claude, or there are various ways developers or customers like to use your docs so they can view it as markdown, copy to clipboard. But what this looks like, which I'll show you here, is from a customer experience perspective, the Ask AI pops open on the side here. And as a customer, I want to know, Tell me about bidirectional sync. And so your customer is able to chat with your docs and get answers to their questions with the source information being your own docs. And here you can even click, your customer can even click to those docs and learn more about the integrations, whatever it is that they're asking about. And then the drop down that I mentioned, you can configure. So there are various ways to do this. You can configure what you want in terms of showing options for ChatGPT, Claude, and then it opens up your docs in ChatGPT, right? That was like a very fast overview here, and I'm happy to host more office hours to help folks onboard and learn more about these tools. I see we've got a few questions. Awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions for Anand or myself? Oh, okay. I think the question is, how do customers, is that what CX stands for? How do customers get access to the MCP server? Good question. Let me pull that up really quick. I'll share my screen again. Okay. I think we're in our docs. Okay, so here in the AI panel, when you generate your MCP server by toggling this on, you're gonna have that MCP URL, and what you can do is actually—
You're not sharing yours. You're sharing a different
Oh,
screen.
I'm sharing the landing page.
Yep.
I had a feeling that was the case. Oh, there it is. Thanks, Anand. So in the AI panel, when you generate your MCP server by toggling this on, I'm not gonna toggle it off because these are our production docs, and I've done that once before in a demo. But when you enable your own MCP server, you're going to generate this MCP URL. Here, to enable it for your customers, you can also generate an MCP page. This generates a documentation template that pretty much has instructions on how to connect to your MCP server. When you click that generate MCP documentation page, it's going to generate that. I was in edit mode there, but it's going to generate this page. This page is in your documentation. You can make this accessible to your customers. So like we already have one of these pages in our own docs that shows how to use our MCP server, but this would effectively make it accessible to your end customers. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being so engaged. And I will follow up with a recording, demo, and our own docs about MCP server. So thank you for joining.